See, remember, I'm a math person. I'm analytical, so I tend to be blind.
I'm behind the numbers.
That kind of
Give me a spread. Everybody ready? Are you? Okay. Alrighty then. Yeah, we go. So calling this special meeting of the Bethel Board of Education to order on September 30th, 2022 at 4:46 p.m. When you're ready, Mrs. Hagan, please call the roll.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Here.
Mrs. Sebastian. Here. Mr. Elam.
Here.
Mrs. Donahue.
Here. Okay. First item beyond that is up for the review and approval of the agenda this evening. Is there a motion? I'll move. Thank you, Mrs. Sebastian.
I'll second.
And a second from Mr. Elam. Thank you, Mr. Elam. We need a discussion. We can't add anything on the special. When you're ready to sing.
I'm sorry, I just didn't hear what you said.
Oh, I was just saying that since it's a special, we can't really change the agenda for special meetings. We have to go with what it is. You can't change the agenda on special meetings. So not really any point for discussion is what I'm saying. So
Thanks, just didn't hear you.
no, sorry about that. I have my head down. You're absolutely right. So when you're ready, Ms. Hagan, if you can please call the vote.
Mrs. Sebastian.
Yes.
Mr. Elam.
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue.
Yes.
Okay, moving then to item 2, recommendations and business. Item A is a discussion and review and approval for ESSER and ARP plan and budget, and I believe that's you, Mr. Crispin?
Yes.
Yes.
So want to hear about it now,
I
or
would-
you want to hear a motion, second, and discussion?
We can do either, I suppose. Do either. So is there a motion for this item?
I'll move.
Mr. Elam? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Sebastian with the second. Okay, then discussion. That is traditionally how we do it.
Yeah, so the use of ESSER funds are limited. There are like 14 provisions, and they all center around their federal funds. There have been 3 phases of those handed out. I think this district's received like 1.7 in ESSER 1, 2, and 3. Currently, Tina, we're about at 900 and some change.
Yeah, this is we had ESSER CARES, which was before I got here. Then you had ESSER Round 2, and then you had ESSER ARP, and this is now ESSER State Activity Award, where they gave districts that received additional monies per pupil. So this is $923,000 in this State Activity Award. It's our 4th round of
Yeah, so again, just kind of picking up where things were this summer. I know monies have been shifted around. Once allocated for the stadium, 1 point whatever million moved to the building project. And the district had to go from plan of artificial surface, synthetic surface to grass. I know lots of districts around the state and the country have used ESSER funds to upgrade outdoor facilities, tracks, field houses, outdoor restrooms at stadiums, that type of things. Fields fall under 2 of those provisions of the 14. And so got a letter from her attorney, an opinion letter saying that, they backed that and supported that. And so it's a way to use these funds that have otherwise just kind of been sitting there. So it's a way of getting the community and the district what it originally set out to get. And the stadium, which is a synthetic surface that can be used for lots and lots of different things, stuff you've already discussed prior to me coming. So that's what we're trying to get done.
So the second item on here, if I can interject, is to to purchase the short throw projectors or interactive boards for the K-5 building in an effort to have all the technology we need in the elementary building when we open the doors. I guess at one point in time we had said we'll use PI funds for that. So we've had additional expenses incurred as a result on the PI side, as far as propane tanks, moving electrical poles, and things of that nature. So if we can have these federal funds pay for that, then we can use the PI money to hopefully assist in completing the 5th grade wing and other things as we move towards finishing the project. So it is, an allowable expense for technology in the classroom. So.
Questions, comments, discussion from the board?
Mr. Crispin, can you tell us some things that ESSER dollars can't be used for?
Well, they can't be used to finish the 5th grade wing. Can't be used to furnish, a building or new building unless, again, everything has to tie back to, does it help if you have a large gathering, keeping social distancing, other safety and security measures. And so paper, use it to buy paper or other supplies, unless you can tie it back to somehow that's going to close the gap as far as the learning loss that took place during COVID. So I can't remember if I sent those provisions to the board or if those were vague. Lots of lawyer terms that all go back to addressing learning loss, safety, security measures.
The fact that we're growing by leaps and bounds and we need all this new curriculum, we still can't use it for that curriculum and those chairs and those desks and all that stuff, even though theoretically we are creating space and helping to kind of spread students out, right? There's no way we can use those dollars for any of that. Is that right?
That would be a question for our attorneys. My understanding is unless somehow you can stretch it like this new curriculum is going to, we're buying, if it's 5th grade reading curriculum, are we going to dumb it down? It's not, I don't know how you would do that to address, to fall under that
But because
provision
it's new books for new kids, it's not to mitigate loss or learning.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Correct. So because it's new books for new kids, it doesn't apply. Because it's new desks for new kids, it doesn't apply. Correct?
Yes. And to address some of the issues that we're having with newcomers really doesn't fit into that. But
Right.
we're chasing some dollars.
The fact that we're growing by leaps and
With that
bounds,
piece.
we can't use this money just for the fact that we're getting big
No.
and we need more space. It's not that kind of space.
That's not my
It's,
understanding.
okay.
No, it has to, pretty much the rule of thumb has been it has to answer 5 questions. It has to fall into 5 areas. It has to be, you have to be able to answer one of 5 questions, which is, will the proposed use of funds prevent, prepare for, or respond to the coronavirus? Okay. 2, is it an allowable use of funds under CARES, the CRR, SA, or ARC? Is it reasonable and necessary, and does it promote equity, and does it support returning students to the classroom? So, we have to be able to answer those 4 or 5 questions, and it has to all sort of tie back to that. So, even this application has to go through ODE's approval process, and they have a team that's dedicated to looking at all construction, requests, and we have yet to, we heard back from them this morning, and they wanted more information, so we sent that off to them as well. So they have not approved the plan, but we're waiting to hear from them, so.
Yeah, and then I think under number 2 is where you get into 14 provisions
Right.
under
Exactly.
ARP, which
Mhm.
essentially are out of 2 buckets.
And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think historically we used this for like the security film on the doors. We used it for things like that.
We didn't use it for the security
didn't.
film, no.
It was a different rant.
It
Okay,
was,
sorry.
yeah, we used it for teacher laptops, we've used it for, student Chromebooks, we've used it for employee bonuses. You guys used it the first round or second round, I think, for, remote learning. Cost that you had with Montgomery County ESC.
Oh,
And then
I think we
I
did
think
summer
there
school.
was
Did we do
supplies
summer
for the new set of drinking fountains, the
The
bottle
yeah,
fillers,
yeah.
and all of that stuff as well,
Yeah.
so.
That we all did.
So do you think that desks with special top coats for coronavirus to lessen that transmission would apply as a purchase item because it meets the?
I think framed that way, yes. it would.
I just wondered if the funds weren't going to be spent tonight. I'm trying to figure out how many other things we could use that money for.
Or possibly the what remaining 900,000 we still.
We have 923,000, which is this new money that came in. And then we have about 113,000, some change that didn't get spent with the ARP money that you guys will have to create a plan for moving forward. Waiting for that carryover to be dropped into the CCIP so we can come up with a plan, but there's about 114,000. So.
And so because the funds don't expire today, it's another 2 years. Just for the record, is there a need to do this today? And the reason why I bring that up is because it hasn't really had a chance to go in front of the public. And we're not allowing the public to speak tonight because it is a special meeting. So I was trying to determine the urgency tonight, or at least let that be on record.
Well, if
Yeah.
you'll ask, but go ahead.
Yeah, so, you sit in the construction meetings.
I do.
They've been asking us weekly when we're gonna make a decision. Nobody sitting at that table during the last 2 months has said, when I brought Esser up, I think 6 weeks ago, nobody said, hold on, are there other needs? And so we've kept them on hold with the thinking that this is something the board wants to pursue. And so they're there. They've been waiting for us. Again, it's your project. I'm walking in on it. We can call them tomorrow. We have to call them, let them know. And so that will, if somehow we decide that we want to come back, you decide that you want to come back and do a turf field and use ESSER funds, there's going to be a new expense. Bringing construction crew back to do the field, the drainage, and the whole bit. Actually, you're going to have to undo work because this doesn't go through. I think it's incumbent on us to let them know they need to put in a grass field. And so that's going to change the drainage, the whole bit, all that we're going to pay for. that gets undone if the board goes in a different direction down the road. So, you're right, we have till 2024,
Yeah,
to spend it all, or send it back. So there is time, but we haven't been talking about any of those other needs like desks with special coding.
yeah, that's the first I've heard of it. I mean, we've talked about these ESSER funds being available. I wasn't in attendance at the meeting on the 12th because my father was ill, but I thought that we mentioned having a special to go over the plan and what the intent of the plan was. So the next item on the agenda is a request for proposals or an RFP. That goes out, you've got to wait a few weeks to get proposals back, then you have to do an open of the bids and, public opening of the bids, notifying who, and then getting all of those pieces in order so that they can get started so that we have all that stuff in place. We're behind the 8 ball. So, but ultimately it is the board's decision. And I thought that we were moving in the direction that the board wanted. So if I misunderstood, then I apologize, but that was my understanding.
This was mentioned at the last facilities committee meeting as well.
Correct.
And it was mentioned at the last public board meeting that we would have a special meeting to determine ESSER funds. The public should be aware of that if they go back and listen to the recording. I'm pretty certain I spoke those words.
I agree, both of that was stated, but since that time, there's not been an open public forum for anybody who would like to voice their opinion one way or the other, whether they're in favor or not in favor of it, to present it to the board.
Natalie, I've been in my office every day but one. People could have contacted the superintendent and come in and ask questions, such as you had tonight, and nobody's done that. We're allowed to ask questions in other forums, not just public forum with the board
I
meeting.
agree.
Superintendent's here to serve the community and serve the board. Nobody's contacted me about it.
Well, I just want to note that through the course of the afternoon, I received multiple phone calls and which concern community members. And I know my understanding, there are some concerns from the teachers. So I just wanted to make sure that that was known as well. And just that not everybody that has had a chance to speak to this since our last regular session meeting.
Is there further discussion or comments?
I do have a question. Sorry, one more question. So the plan, as it stands, you've finished the ODE application, I believe you said, or you're working on that, that will go to them?
Yeah, we submitted it, hoping to get their approval because we're trying to wait to see what they will say on the construction side.
So that already was submitted?
Mhm.
Okay. And so I'm gonna,
Which it can always be changed. It's not like, that's etched in stone. Like we're probably not gonna spend $173,000, $173,288.03 on smart throw projectors or interactive boards. I don't even know what the proper term is. That's what was left in the budget. And when you're applying for a grant, you try to spend every dollar and put it in the budget. And so if we spend $110,000 on those items, then we free up another $58,000 or $68,000 to spend somewhere else. We do a budget revision, ODE reviews it, sees if it complies. So it's not a etched in stone kind of thing. We were trying to say, okay, I didn't want ODE to give our funds away. September 30th, in October, they start moving money around and doing carryover. And I didn't want them to think because we hadn't submitted an application by September, at this point, that we didn't want the money. So we submitted an application. So at the very least, we'd get it'd be a placeholder. So if we decide we don't want to go that route, meaning the board, not me, then we can certainly resubmit the application, but an application has been submitted.
thank you.
You're welcome.
And without getting too much in the weeds, but I think this is somewhat important.
asphalt plants close Thanksgiving weekend. And some of this construction impacts whether we can do some of the concrete and some of the asphalt in this fall. We've already been told there's going to be an increase, and they suspect it could be a substantial increase that will further impact our budget if we put this off till spring. They've been very open with us in the building meetings on this. So I'll be quite honest, I pushed on this, and you can ask Mr. Crispin, but I feel like, can we get approval on this? And it's because I feel like if we don't make a decision, we're adding costs to the project, and I don't think anybody wants to do that. I mean, personally, I wish we could use this money to finish the 5th grade wing, but it's got strings on it. And I mean, I'm sorry, I know it's disappointing. I understand that. But unfortunately, when we take state and federal grants, that's how it goes.
We are releasing funds to start finishing from the contingency funds. So,
Just music to our ears.
Yeah.
Our contingency still exists.
Yep.
And that it can be released and it can be used for the 5th grade line. That's a wonderful thing. That was the best news I've heard all week. So yes, it's wonderful. Anything further? Questions, comments, concerns? Because we do have a motion before pending right now.
Call the question.
Okay, calls the question. Mrs. Hageman, will you please call the vote?
Mrs. Sebastian,
Yes.
Mr. Elam,
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue.
No,
Motion passes 3-1. Okay, moving on to item B. This is
Madam
to-
President,
Yes,
I need to ask for a timeout.
okay.
Thank you.
We will pause the meeting.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, it's going to be out.
That's right. That's right.
Good. Mr. Crispin, we're good?
Yes.
Okay, and we're back in session. Oh, you're fine. You're perfectly fine. Item B is discuss, review, and approve the RFP for synthetic field. I believe we're looking for a motion for that item.
I'll move.
Thank you, Mrs. Sebastian. Is there a second for the RFP for synthetic field?
I'll second.
Mrs. Donahue. The second. Discussion, please. Mr. Crispin?
Yeah, so the RFP was, because these are federal funds, we have to, what's the bacon
Davis-Bacon, prevailing wage.
prevailing wage? So we have to put it out there to bid and most likely take the lowest bidder. So previously the board was almost in contract with Maumee Bay for the surface. So we kind of used their quote as a template, as well as some others I borrowed from other colleagues and put together an RFP. Tina looked it over with her expertise, contracts, as well as our attorneys. So that's how it was created.
It's out there for everybody to see, and we'll of course make it available because we want people to start submitting bids. But 5.1 is where we're saying if the project's being funded in whole or in part by federal ESSER dollars, and as such, prevailing wages in accordance with the Davis-Bacon Act will be applicable to the project. So that and there's a lot of extra steps that have to be taken after the contract is awarded, but it's noted in the bid.
Discussion, comments, questions from the board?
I asked the question, would this be executed if for some reason ODE doesn't approve the application? And will you respond to that, Mr. Crispin?
Yeah, so if we don't, or we change our minds or whatever, we just remove it and process stops. Yeah. Unless somebody hits the lottery and,
Makes a donation.
makes a donation,
Yeah, because we
we'll
have
stop the process, or no, we'll continue the process, but
Yeah.
our funds are coming elsewhere.
There's a provision that says the board reserves the right to withdraw the project or stop at any point, so.
And do you have to have a minimum of 3 bids for?
No, when you do a request for bids or proposal, this way there's no minimum. You try to get as many as you want, as you need. Now, you can say we don't want to accept any of this and go out to bid again, but typically we don't ever impose a minimum. I know our board policy says if anything above 15,000, I think, we want to have at least 3 bids, but in my past experience, sometimes you get 12, and then sometimes you only get 1 or 2. So it really depends upon the project and the timing of it. So as far as federal guidelines, they would like you to have as many as you possibly can, preferably 3 or more. So we'll do our best.
But if only 2 respond.
If we only have 2 that respond, as long as we provide that information, I'm sure, we'll have to see if they'll accept that, but I think they will. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And was it mandatory that we approve an RFP going out? Because I only ask that because the only other time we've done one, approved an RFP before it went out, I believe was for the farm lease, the land lease for the farm. Is this one mandatory for any reason?
Well, it's a pretty big project, and so I prefer to have the board's seal of approval on anything we put out to get bids, and we're acting on the board's behalf, so we certainly want to have the board's approval as we put those bids out and collect them. So is it mandatory? I would say yes, it's required for any kind of big project like this. We need board approval.
Yeah, anything this big that I've been a part of, it's always been authorized by the board.
And again, the reason that we're doing this now and not Tuesday or next Monday is, again, because of the urgency in getting some things done, so we know pricing. Because we're getting close to the end of the year in winter.
2 days. And we've certainly done RFPs for, architects and, things like that before. RFQs and RFPs we did RFQ for the restroom partitions and things like that. We've certainly done them before, but approved them at the board level before. Absolutely.
I just wondered if this was
follows on to the other item.
different because of it being ESSER funds.
But this is just kind of follows on with the item right immediately before it, and so that's why, right?
No, I think the only thing different about this is using the ESSER funds is to make a note about the Davis-Bacon prevailing wage requirement. Because that is gonna have an effect on what their bids are gonna be, right? So, it means that they have to pay, a certain rate and time and a half for overtime and everything that's applicable with Davis-Bacon, which is a federal requirement. So, yeah, I think that's the only difference. You know, there is federal procurement rules that we have to follow, which is either a request for bids, request for proposals, and that we have to make sure we get as many bids and we keep it open for anybody that's interested.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further items? Items for discussion?
Mr. Elam,
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue,
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian.
Yes.
Item passes 4-0. Item C, appointment of a new Board of Education member. Actually, before we do the motion and second on this one, I would like to have a little bit of preface and discussion on that, if we could. First, I would like to thank the 8 applicants that we had, who did come in and speak with the board, at length, actually. Fabulous candidates. Could not have been more impressed with the 8 candidates that we did have. They were so interesting, and it was such a wonderful evening, getting to know some people. And actually, there were some people that I might have had some predetermined opinions of that were very changed. Honestly, I feel very different about some people, to tell you the truth. I don't know if the other board members feel the same about some people. And when you read about people on paper and you're sort of like, and then you talk to them in person, often it does change your opinion, and it truly was the case. And I felt through the evening personally, and I hope this is the same for the other board members too, that the decision got more and more difficult as the evening went on. And honestly, it wasn't until we had some discussion amongst ourselves that it sort of cemented and firmed my own personal opinion about who I thought I might want, or who my top 2 candidates were in my mind. And in our discussion, I think it's fair to say that the board came down to, 3 and then probably down to 2 top candidates that we had in mind. And that was where most of our discussion was centered. And that was where we spent the bulk of our time having discussions. And so whenever someone makes a recommendation for who they think it's going to be, I think it may be, maybe who people think it'll be, and maybe it won't. But there's probably still some lingering doubts in some people's mind of who they think they 100% are behind and who they 100% want for sure. But we definitely had 2 top, solid, firm candidates for sure. Some people's mind may still be thinking it's 3. So I think that's all fair, very fair to say. But could not be more grateful, could not have been more impressed, and genuinely people stepped up in a big way, and it was very impressive. And I'm just could not be more thrilled to have had things go the way that they went. So thank you to everyone from the bottom of my heart. It was wonderful. And now I will call and say, is there a recommendation for the new member of Bethel Local Schools Board of Education? Making a motion at the same time. Is anyone going to make a motion for who that person should be?
I'll make a motion for Mrs. Regan Butler.
Mrs. Regan Butler. Is there a second? Hearing no second, that motion falls. Is there another motion?
I'll make a motion for Mr. Jacob King.
Maybe that's coming.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Wow.
Thank you, Lori, for the second. Is there discussion?
I would just like to echo what you said. We had some great candidates and had some great discussions. Ranged from communication to just a host of issues, and just it was a very pleasant evening, and got to enjoy meeting some new people, got to enjoy talking with some people I've known for some time. And I really want to just say thank you, because to put yourself out here in this climate and just this job when it's when you know there's going to be a lot of work and a lot of whatever you do, there's going to be some people who don't like your decisions. I think it takes a really strong person to even consider interviewing. So I would also like to say thank you to those 8 people who interviewed.
So I'm going to read a statement that I wrote. Apologize because I didn't bring my reading glasses, but the applicant that is up for appointment tonight was one of 3 previous board members who applied for the vacant seat on the school board. All applicants, as was noted, were top-notch, and any of them could have easily filled the seat. I do not believe, and this is my personal opinion, that this appointee will unite the current board with the community, and I have concerns that there will be further divisions as a result of this selection. Thank you.
It's fair to say we've already starting off the bat with an agree to disagree scenario there. I've always found Mr. King to be an excellent communicator. I think he's one who can patch relationships, and I think if we all can give him a chance to get to know him and to work together, I think things are going to turn out much better than people lead into it and anticipate with. Given a fair shot, if people open their minds and open their hearts and are willing to have conversations, things can get better. But I think that's where we tend to lack a lot in this community. So let's hope we can turn that around. That's my comment, my statement off the cuff. So unprepared. Any further comments from the board?
Again, it's nothing personal.
It sounded incredibly personal. I have to say,
I
that sounded
wouldn't do it
incredibly personal. It really did.
I'm sorry?
That sounded incredibly personal. I just have to say, if you say that's nothing personal, I think it sounded incredibly personal. I have to say. If you had said that to me, I would think that was definitely a personal statement you would say to someone. It just sounded very personal. I mean, it really did. So hopefully we can, open our minds in our meetings and get to know each other and just work together and move forward. That's the kind of thing we're trying to do here. Move forward, not look to the past. So anything further from anyone?
I agree with Lori, yourself, Mrs. Mansfield, in terms of the quality of candidates. It didn't seem like a 4-hour interview, not at all. 8 quality people. Once again, I think we have the most qualified and best candidate.
And I think many of them should remember that November will be an election season, and I think there are a lot of them who really should consider that time frame, because we have some outstanding people, truly. If there's nothing further, Mrs. Hageman, please call the vote.
Mrs. Sebastian,
Yes.
Mr. Elam,
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue.
No.
Motion passes 3-1. Sit down. Next item is for adjournment of the meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn? Oh, no, I'm sorry, I lied. We had a request to do a public comment. Mrs. Kipper.
So I would like to echo the fact that it seems like we are wasting money on artificial turf. We have a myriad of more pressing issues facing our district. Overcrowding, lack of space, lack of furniture, materials, and let's not forget a lack of staff. We need to be spending money on things that will pay off, not luxury items. This also goes for the fancy gaming monitors versus smart boards that are solely for educational purposes. I understand that there are only certain items that can be used, that this money can be used for, but let's at least look for some better uses of the money. In addition, the flip response from the superintendent towards a board member is uncalled for and unprofessional. The members that approved this new appointment are a disgrace. You are tone deaf to the community and not doing what is in the best interest of this school. The only way this would have been acceptable is if this were the only candidate. And you said that was not true. The three of you in your time on the board cannot come to an end soon enough. The fact that the candidates received a letter last evening telling them they were not selected shows that this board already made up their decision before tonight. Additionally, I would also like to point out that the Pledge of Allegiance has been removed from the agenda once again. Let's get back to what we are here for. Thank you.
Not all candidates received that letter, and the Pledge of Allegiance is on the agenda.
I didn't hear. Did you say it?
We've never set it for special meetings.
It wasn't on the meeting last month.
Last month we missed it. You're absolutely correct, but it would be on this month's meeting. So it was an oversight.
Well,
And we own that.
the candidates that were rejected received a letter last evening. So to
Okay.
come in here and act like this big surprise that Jacob was gonna be appointed is ridiculous. When you had already told the other candidates, thanks, but no thanks.
So I also told them that we would let them know.
I'm
As
telling
soon
you the
as we-
fact. So my feelings really don't matter. I'm telling you the facts. And the fact is that this board does not take into consideration the community. You do what you think is best for yourselves. And that is tone deaf. Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback. Appreciate it very much. And with that, we're moving on to item 3. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Thank you, Mr. Elam. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Donahue. No need for discussion, I assume? Is, would you call the roll, Mrs. Hickman?
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mrs. Donahue,
Yes.
Mrs. Sebastian,
Yes.
Mr. Elam.
Yes.
For a vote, we are adjourned at 5:28 PM.